Kirby.
Hi, this is our project, and it is about reciprocal teaching. My name is Brittany Studer.
I'm Maldonado.
And I'm Donovan O'Connor.
This presentation is for Framingham State University course LTRC 920, Issues in Strategy in Reading and Literacy Instruction. In this presentation, we will cover what is reciprocal teaching and its benefits. We will talk about how to introduce strategies and roles, which will include these four roles, predicting role, clarifying role, questioning role, and summarizing role. We will also discuss how to implement reciprocal teaching in the classroom and how to do it successfully. We will show you how to monitor the learning of the students and how reciprocal teaching benefits not only the students, but also the teachers. And finally, we'll discuss why we use reciprocal teaching. We will conclude this presentation with a Q&A session.
Reciprocal teaching is an innovative strategy that promotes students' comprehension and interactive learning. This is a strategy that can be used for many different subjects and content areas. Anne Brown and Anne-Marie Polininsker described reciprocal teaching as a dialogue between teachers and students for the purpose of jointly constructing the meaning of text. With reciprocal teaching, students and teachers work hand in hand, and sometimes the students may even take the role of the teacher because they are responsible for their own learning and keep staying on track and engaged during this. Teachers should model and then help students learn to guide group discussions on their own. We will talk later on in this presentation on how exactly to do that and what it should look like in your classroom.
The benefits of reciprocal teaching are many and plenty. The biggest advantage is advancing the students' reading comprehension. This also teaches questioning to students. Reciprocal teaching helps students improve upon many skills like leadership, teamwork, negotiation, listening, and their collaborative skills. Reciprocal teaching provides the opportunity to build these long-term skills and gain experiences that are going to help our students throughout their collegiate life, their school life, and their professional life. It facilitates a group effort between teachers and students. This really allows teachers to figure out how their students enjoy learning and how they best learn. It allows students to construct the meaning of text themselves. This is huge for our students because this lets them go when they're studying, when they're doing other things, reading books in their lives, they get to understand as they read. It is most effective in the context of a small group. The fewer people you have, we believe minimum is 4 that you should have, the better it's going to go for everyone. Reciprocal teaching is proven in pre-post trials to help students improve their reading abilities. This gives the teacher and the students, it exhibits faith and builds confidence in the students because the teacher's giving them a role in their own learning. They get to have a little bit of ownership over what it is they're doing in the classroom and what they're actually learning. And the best part is it creates good study habits, which goes along with those collaborative skills and others that are going to help them throughout their lives.
There are 4 different steps in reciprocal teaching. The first step is making predictions. While you are making predictions, you think about what is going to happen in the text, what the text is, what you think the text may be about, and you're coming up with the information from your background knowledge on why you think so. The next step is clarification. Clarification happens when you are clarifying and defining vocabulary for students before they read the text and any other questions that they may have about the content being taught. The next step is questioning. How will we get students to ask rigorous and relevant questions is a very important role that the educator has in modeling this step for students. And the last is summarizing. So this can happen at all different grade levels and all different proficiency levels. And it's done by retelling, summarizing, figuring out the theme, and so on.
Reciprocal teaching is a student-centered activity. This strategy helps students facilitate their own meaningful development of reading. However, before they begin this activity, they need to know how and what they're actually doing. So it's important that the teacher gives direction. Direction given in conjunction with modeling by the teacher will provide examples of how the students are going to act in any given role. And as Brittany just told us, there are 4 different strategies, and those 4 strategies have 4 different roles that coexist with them. One will be the role of the predictor, the second will be the clarifier, the third will be the questioner, and the fourth will be the summarizer. After you have modeled these 4 strategies and the roles that they have, you will then divide the students into groups of 4. In the groups of 4, you will allocate a role to each of the students. After you have modeled and demonstrated what to do and allocated the roles, you will then let them go on their own. Let them do have their own experience with the reading. You will continue to further guide them and support them in their use of the 4 strategies within these small groups.
The first role that takes place is the predicting role. The predicting role involves combining the reader's prior knowledge, new knowledge they may get from the text, and the text structure to create a hypothesis related to the direction of the text and the author's intent in writing. The prediction phase engages readers in actively combining their own background knowledge with what they have gathered from the text. Predictors will make guesses about what a passage might be about or what might happen next. We have chosen an article called The Secret of Effective Feedback to help us demonstrate how to use reciprocal teaching with you. And by looking at this excerpt from the very beginning of The Secret of Effective Feedback, a student may make a prediction that educators will find examples for how to effectively give feedback to their students.
The second role we're going to go over today is the clarifying role. The clarification strategy focuses on training students in specific steps to help with decoding. That's going to be your letter sounds, your correspondence, your chunking, your spelling. With second language learners, especially big when you think about the words that all sound very similar, like sell, sell, and sell. It's going to provide a strategy to deal with difficult vocabulary and lapses in concentration. As we all know, we've all read a paragraph while we're going through our studies, and when you get to the end of it, you have no clue what you just read. You were on autopilot. So paying attention while you read, getting those words, the vocabulary, everything that doesn't quite make sense helps you stay concentrated. Clarifying also involves the identification and clarification of unclear, difficult, or unfamiliar aspects of a text. Especially when we start getting into educational text, there are going to be a lot of words that might pop up. There might be a lot of themes that are going to pop up that we don't quite understand. And it's imperative that the students and the teachers model, as we covered earlier, that we want to look those up in real time so we understand the text as we go. Some of these unfamiliar aspects are awkward sentence or passage structures, unfamiliar vocabulary, unclear references, or obscure concepts. The clarifier is going to address the confusing parts, and they're going to attempt to answer the question posed by the question. Let me go over that one again. They're going to attempt to answer the questions posed by the questioning role. In the William article that Brittany introduced earlier, while we were going through with our students, we came across the word of chlorofluorocarbons. That one's difficult even for me to say right now. Whenever we brought that up, the clarifier looked it up on how to actually make the pronunciation and told us what that word actually meant, which gave us more aspect to understand what was going on with the ozone layer. Another one that got tricky on us, which I believe was obscure or unclear, is make thinking wholly visible. When you're trying to learn a second language, or even when you're just deep into studies and it's been 2 hours and you're kind of going crazy, how do you make thinking visible? And it's one of these deals where the clarifier and the group get to work together, and you get to understand those idioms or understand the unclear, obscure writings.
The next role is the questioning role. When using the questioning strategy, readers monitor and assess their own understanding of the text by asking themselves questions. This displays self-awareness of one's own internal thought process and is termed metacognition. It's thinking about one's own thinking. Questioning involves the identification of information, themes, and ideas that are central and important to the text. The central or important information, themes, or ideas are used to generate questions that are then used as self-tests for the readers. The questioner will pose questions about the text, maybe unclear parts or puzzling information, or questions to connect other concepts already learned. Some starter questions that the questioner can ask would be like who, what, when, why, where, how, and what if. The questioner not only asks, and the readers not only ask themselves, but ask each other as a group. It's to help the group understand what has been read. Asking questions about a text helps you have a purpose or a reason for reading, and it deepens your understanding. This is a little paragraph from our article that we are presenting with this. And on here, what the student did was they highlighted what was important to them. So they highlighted in science and how to, what they needed to do for the science experiment. Then they talked about the math and it resulting about a mathematical investigation. And then they talked about the language arts and they had to redraft a literary essay. So they highlighted what was important to them. But then they went back and read again, and maybe a question that came up would be, they already knew what an element was, but the fact that it says qualitative element, they didn't know what that was. So that could be a student type of question. What is a qualitative element? It's helping them further understand the text and get a better grip of what it's trying to say. Now for an educator, they could look at this, read this article, and maybe think of like, what are other methods that teachers can use to help students understand the importance of correcting work they have already done? So in this way, the question will depend on who the reader is. So you can have a student question, something very basic, what is a qualitative element, or something much more in depth, which an educator might have. So questioning, again, just further helps you understand what you're reading for comprehension. The fourth role is the summarizing role. Summarization assigns the reader the task of discriminating between important and less important information in a text. That information must then be organized into a coherent whole in your words. The information can be found anywhere in the story, and it should happen often for those students who are at risk. And what we mean by students who are at risk are those who are lower level readers or English second language learners, or those who have trouble decoding words for young or early learners. And when you summarize for these specific lower level readers, you need to summarize more and more often so that they can retain the information and to promote reading comprehension. Summarizing happens first at sentence level, then in paragraphs, and then to a whole text for young learners, because you're basically trying to get the main idea. You only use the information that is important. Everything else you don't have to worry about. So you keep it simple and concise. And you keep the summary short. That's another good thing. And what we use here to explain that is an annotated bibliography from this article. Now this is a student's work. They took the whole article and condensed it just for themselves. This is what makes sense to them in their own words. So they said that the article was about effective feedback, short and to the point. For educators, feedback is a crucial part of their instruction, making sure that students are aware of how they are doing and what they can improve. They then go on to talk about the main points that they thought were important. They thought the main points in this article covered keeping purpose in mind, giving feedback students can use, assigning tasks that illuminate thinking, building students' capacity for self-assessment, and creating a trusting relationship for feedback. And at the very end, he decided to the student decided to enter another key last point, something that he said he deems the secret. You can make your summary in any words that you want to, and this is how he used it for, I think, for him to really hone in on what the main idea was. He explained that the author said that the teacher needs to know the student in order to receive feedback in a meaningful way, since what the student does with that feedback is the most important thing. Again, summarizing main ideas with only essential information in your own words for comprehension.
Now that we know what reciprocal teaching is and the roles involved of it, we'll get into how to actually implement reciprocal teaching in the classroom. First things first, put your students into groups of 4. You're going to have little note cards that are going to explain each role. You're going to go through the predictor, the clarifier, the summarizer, and the last one. And you're going to give those students these note cards to let them know their roles, and you're going to give them a breakdown of what their job is about to be. The teacher or students are going to read a few paragraphs of the assigned text selection then. You're going to encourage students to use the note-taking strategies that you've gone over in class before and shared with them to help them better prepare for their role during the discussion. At the given stopping point, the summarizer is going to highlight the key ideas up to this point in the reading. It might be 1 paragraph, it might be 2 paragraphs, it could even be only a couple of sentences depending on what text you're dealing with and the abilities of your students. The questioner will then pose questions about the selection. They're going to go over the unclear parts, maybe a tough vocabulary word, maybe just a weird phrase. And they're going to hit that puzzling information too, like, how did this cause that to happen? The clarifier is going to address these confusing parts and attempt to answer the questions that were just posed. And then the predictor is going to be able to offer predictions about what the author will tell the group next. Or if it's a literary selection, the predictor might suggest what the next events in the story will be. This is going to continue until the entire selection is read. Once the students are comfortable with the reciprocal teaching approach, have the students pass their roll card one person to the right and then read the next selection. This is going to allow your students to get comfortable with one role to start with, and then you're going to throw them through a loop, so they're going to have to learn a new one, and they're going to have to learn new strategies, and they're going to have to kind of change up their brains, make them work a little bit more to switch roles. The students are going to repeat the process using these new roles, and that's how we implement reciprocal teaching in the classroom.
How to successfully use reciprocal teaching in the classroom is to give clear roles to your students that will help them stay engaged. This is a major strategy because you want to make sure that you're thinking about the students when you are giving and assigning roles. When they've had enough practice, you can kind of switch the roles around so that everyone gets a chance to try them out, but you want even the quieter students who might find it hard to share ideas and thoughts and answers in front of an entire class to feel comfortable with their group so that everyone's engaged and really trying to play their role. You also want to give students time to practice the key strategies behind reciprocal teaching. So this isn't something that you would implement for 5 minutes into the classroom. You would really want to give the students time to ask questions about the roles and really develop their strategies and skills with each role so that their confidence is hired. And you want every person in a group to have a role. So that is why it is a 4-person group strategy. And the really nice thing about reciprocal teaching is that you can use it in any different classes. So it can be applied across all content areas, and it can also be applied from primary all the way up until high school and into college as well.
Now we've got to know that reciprocal teaching is actually working. So how do we monitor that learning of students? The big one, the thing everybody knows, we walk around the classroom and monitor student engagement and focus. You've got to make sure your students are on target. You got to make sure they're on assignment. You want to know that the questioner is asking questions, the clarifier is answering these questions, the predictors taking these context clues and what they've learned, and they're going to say, hey, I think the next section is going to be about this. And that fourth one, man, I just can't remember what that fourth role is.
Questioner.
As a teacher, the questioner, there we go. You're going to want to have questions ready that can be asked to your students that are going to relate to the reading. That way you can check for the understanding. These don't have to be difficult. You just want to go along with what's the theme about of these passage or these sentences. You want to make sure the students are paying attention as they're reading. They're being active readers. Also, an assignment you can have during is have the students write a list of questions asked in their group or share key ideas from the article that were highlighted by the group. These are going to be questions you can ask the whole class at the end of the day when you're coming over and you're reviewing and summarizing what you guys have read and what was learned. The great thing about this is you get to learn how your students learn, and that's going to help the other students in your class whenever y'all go through the review process and you start summarizing and you see how each student and each group mixes with one another. You can also prepare worksheets that are going to connect the reading themes with the 4 strategies. This way, we've always got to have something physical that's going to show administration that, hey, what I'm doing is working and here's proof that it's working. Tests and quizzes are the other one that's going to give us this one. It's going to let us assess the students' comprehension. And the biggest thing is it's going to let us know where we might be shortchanging our students. We want them to succeed, and we need to make sure we're presenting their math, their science, their literature through reciprocal teaching in a way that they understand it, the way that they're able to hold on to that information and they're able to give it back to us so we know that they've actually learned.
Reciprocal teaching strategies benefit teachers because it creates a strong platform for students to collaborate openly with their teachers and discuss the best ways to understand the text as a group. Teachers who are open to new ideas will find reciprocal teaching a hugely beneficial and rewarding approach. Reciprocal teaching is an exciting process where teachers can watch their pupils overcome challenges by themselves and build confidence at every age. When you use reciprocal teaching in your classroom, teachers will be able to kind of take a step back and look at how their students have developed themselves as learners and are able to apply what they have learned in the past in helping guide their own education, which is always so rewarding and is something that can help you feel very fulfilled and know that what you're doing in the classroom is actually working and going to benefit your students in the long run.
Why we use reciprocal teaching. So some of the reasons why we use reciprocal teaching are to encourage students to think about their own thought process during reading. It makes the students actively involved and monitor their own comprehension. The more engaged the students are with what they're doing, the more interested they become. And you know, when students become more interested in something, they are more prone to learn more. So this is a great technique and strategy to use for students. Reciprocal teaching teaches students to ask questions. It gets them to have critical thinking, to question everything around them. It encourages cooperation between students in groups. It gets people to actually reach out and ask for help instead of like trying to do everything by themselves. It gives them the ability and vulnerability to ask for help and see how everyone else is doing things. So it's a great cooperation skill to have. It also instills skills that provide students the ability to analyze, problem solve, and reason across different subjects. It also allows for differentiated instruction, both with teacher instruction and peer-guided instruction. And as Brittany said earlier, reciprocal teaching can be used in various content area classes: English, math, history, science, and can also be used for various grade levels by adapting and accommodating for the students for whom you are teaching. Reciprocal teaching is an effective way to help students understand the content more profoundly.
If you have any questions about reciprocal teaching, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment box below. We really love this strategy and see how beneficial it can be in all different classes, and would love to clarify any questions you may have about how to implement it into your planning and use it with your own students.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.